Well, we see the impact of the ongoing war in Ambazonia, which is harming the economy and some institutions like the CDC, Cameroon Development Corporation. Workers of the Cameroon Development Corporation took to the streets on Tuesday, November 12th, in Tico, Atlantic Zone, the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, demanding their unpaid wages. Earlier today, the disgruntled protesters in their numbers with peace plans in their hands, chanting that the CDC general manager should be fired. They chanted, Nj Franklin must go, as they walked the streets. Contrary enough, the CDC general manager has been a recipient of several local awards and recognition this year alone, according to organizers for his service at the helm of the institution. Inscriptions and placards planted before the CDC office demanded the payment of 55 months of unpaid wages. It read, CDC workers, we want arrears salaries that have not been paid months prior. Before the advent of the ongoing war in Ambazonia, the CDC Corporation, which used to be the largest employer in the country after the state of the Cameroons, is now facing several setbacks. Funny enough, with the weight of the war on the colonial regime, the regime is still pressing on with the military option to tackle the war in Ambazonia rather than addressing the root causes of grievances. Funds have been diverted to foot La Republic's war bills on Ambazonia by equipping its army and having nothing left to pay its workers of the CDC. While still in Ambazonia, we see decades of lies and failed promises as frustration mounts in Ambazonia over decaying infrastructure and escalating living cost. Comedian Tembu Daniel Ebere, popularly known as 237 Town Crier, took to the streets in Bamenda to expose the colonial government's persistent neglect. To reveal the colonial government's persistent neglect, holding placards that read, "Fix our roads. Stop intimidation and harassment." Ebere's protest resonates with the entire southern Cameroons, long marginalized under annexation, intimidated, whose basic needs have been disregarded by the colonial administration. His protests reveal the grim reality behind La République: decades of broken promises, lies and failed development projects, leaving Ambazonians to suffer the consequences in both daily hardships and tragic loss of life. Since the onset of the war in 2016, Ambazonians have lived under the strain of not only violence but also severe neglect in infrastructure, health services and economic development. Road remains in such disrepair that drivers often have to reroute through gas stations to avoid impassable sections, and essential trade routes are rendered useless due to the terrible and dilapidated state of the roads in Ambazonia. Well, it is also interesting to find out that due to the neglect by the colonial regime, Ambazonians have decided to take matters into their own hands. Ambazonians have decided to take matters into their own hands by being their own constructors, developing their own nation, developing the roads, since the La République has decided to abandon the cause Ambazonian roads and everything they owe Ambazonia since the annexation of Ambazonia and since the unholy union of Ambazonia. Well, interesting, we see that while there are impassable roads and accidents occurring on this very terrible state of roads around the entire Ambazonia, we're seeing La République absconding from the duties it owes Ambazonia. And we're seeing that instead of Ambazonians to continue to cry and mourn, they have decided to take matters into their own hands and build their roads, contributing sums of money to make their roads better. Let's take a look at this road, and then you understand why Ambazonians have been so desperate enough to decide to build their roads themselves. Let's take a look at this road.
Ceux qui ont les connaissances puissent appeler. Voilà un bus de trésor voilà, qui vient de faire un accident au niveau des Tengue. Un bus immatriculé LT 917 HD. Donc tous ceux qui ont les connaissances puissent appeler. Un bus de trésor voilà, ça vient de faire tourner là.
Well, despite claims by the Ministry of Public Works to have rehabilitated 2,900 kilometers of roads since 2016, the reality on the ground paints a far bleaker picture. Communities throughout Ambazonia remains encumbered by inadequate infrastructure, putting lives at risk daily. Recent events such as collision of the Douala-Yaoundé road that claimed several lives and a landslide in the Shang that left at least 12 dead serves as tragic reminders of the colonial government's disregard for the southern Cameroons under its annexation. In similar cases, Ambazonians have decided to take their nation's development into their own hands, seeing how futile waiting on the colonial regime is. In the most recent case, the people of Ashong village in the Federal Republic of Ambazonia have raised over 16.5 million franc CFAs to improve their long-neglected water supply system. The initiative, organized by the Ashong Social, Cultural and Development Association, ASCUDA, has thrown more light on the complacent La Republique government's ongoing failure to address critical infrastructure needs. On November 9, 2024, natives of Ashong gathered in Tico to raise funds for their water infrastructure. This came in handy looking at La Republique du Cameroon's government has woefully failed to ease access to the basic commodity for the residents, water. ASCODA's President General Amba John emphasized that the village has faced water challenges since its facilities were built in 1981, with no significant upgrades since then. It has finally, in 2024, decided to develop their community themselves, knowing the promises of development from the colonial regime are neither new nor trustworthy. Despite claims of planning an additional 3,000 kilometers road by 2030, Ambazonians have yet to see any meaningful changes. Colonial President Paul Biya, 42 years rule, has brought only beautiful roads filled with potholes, muddy patches, and erosions. These are the words of Iberi, pointing out sarcastically in his protest. The harsh truth is that each year of neglect deepens the divide between colonial La Republique's promises and the lived reality of Ambazonians. For the Ambazonian population, this latest demonstration is more than just a call to fix roads. It is an outcry for basic rights and dignity that have been systematically denied. With international attention increasingly focused on the colonial injustices facing Ambazonia, there is renewed hope that meaningful change may be possible, but sadly only at the hands of Ambazonians and not the colonial La Republique. Until the colonial government takes genuine action to address these issues, Ambazonia are left to bear the consequences of neglect, a heavy price paid in accidents, injuries, and lives lost on this dangerous road.